Good day, sir. This is Jamabel Diakino, first year BS Crim 1C. I'll be discussing the criminal justice system of different countries, especially Japan, and compare it to our country's criminal justice system. But first, let me define what criminal justice system is. The criminal justice system is a network of government and private agency intended to manage accused and convicted criminals. The criminal justice system is comprised of 5 pillars consisting law enforcement or police, prosecution, court, correction, and community. It is a legal process adopted by civilized society in the prevention and solution of crime which is carried on through investigation, and the persons suspected thereof are taken into legal custody, prosecuted in a court of law, and punished if found guilty or acquitted if found innocent. Provision being made for his or her corrections and rehabilitations. The criminal justice system in the Philippines and Japan are having similarities and differences when it comes to government. Let me discuss the comparison of the two countries. The form of the justice system, the role of 3 branches of government, and also the 5 pillars of the two countries. Start with the form of justice system in the world is inquisitorial and adversarial. Here in the Philippines, the form of the justice system that we have is adversarial, which means that ang tao ay ipinapalagay na inosente hanggat hindi napatunayang nagkasala.
While Japan belongs to an inquisitorial system of the criminal process, a judge oversees the proceeding and also determines the guilt and the sentence of the accused. The citizen lay judges as well as professional judges are allowed to put forth questions to defendants, witnesses, and victims during the trial. Let's proceed to the Japanese system of government in comparisons to the Philippines. Ang ilan sa mga pangunahing katangian na mayroong pagkakatulad sa ibang mga bansa ay kinabibilangan ng paggalang sa mga pangunahing karapatang pantao. Ang sovereignty ng mga tao ay pamahalaan ng mga politikong pinili ng halalan. This type of government is called democracy, and it aims to serve the people and to their will, kung saan ang mga tao ay may awtoridad na mag-isip at magpasya ng batas o pumili ng mga namamahala na ospital para gawin at magsilbing boses sa interes ng bawat individual. The governments of democracies have 3 branches, legislative, executive, and judiciary, which operate in a system of check and balances. Why is there a need to have a check and balances in our government? For my point of view, kaya may branches of government tayo to maintain fairness, avoid injustices, kung saan maraming proseso ang pagdadaanan lahat ng mga bagay na kailangang resolbahin. Hindi lang siya dadaan sa isang kamay o kapangyarihan at upang mapadali rin ang trabaho ng mga nasa oposisyon. Here in the Philippines, the head of the executive branch is called President, but in Japan, the head of the executive branch is called Prime Minister.
The role of 3 branches of government in the Philippines and Japan. First is the legislative branch, which is authorized to make law, alter, and repeal them through the power vested in the Philippines Congress. The legislative branch enact legislation, confirm or reject presidential appointment, and has the authority to declare war. This branch include Congress, the Senate, and House of Representatives, and several agencies that provide support services to Congress. Senate, binubuo ng 24 na senador na dapat ihalal sa kabuuan ng mga botante ng Pilipinas as may be provided by law. House of Representatives shall be composed of not more than 250 members unless otherwise fixed by law. While the legislative branch organ of Japan is the National Diet, it is the bicameral legislature composing of lower house, the House of Representatives, and an upper house, the House of Councilors, empowered by the Constitution to be the highest organ of state power and the only sole law-making organs of the state. in-house are both directly elected under a parallel voting system and are ensured by the Constitution to have no discrimination against the qualification of each member, whether be it based on race, creed, sex, social status, family origin, education, property, or income. The National Diet therefore reflects the sovereignty of the people, a principle of popular sovereignty whereby the supreme power lies within, in this case, the Japanese people. Second is executive branch. The executive branch is composed of the president and the vice president who are elected by direct popular vote and serve a term of 6 years. The Constitution grants the president authority to appoint the cabinet. This department form a large portion of the country's bureaucracy. The executive branch carries out and enforces laws. It includes the president, vice president, the cabinet, executive departments, independent agencies, boards, commission, and committees. And it is almost the same with Japanese executive branch. The different only is the term on how country call their president or prime minister. The president leads the country. He or she is the head of state, leader of the national government, and commander-in-chief of all armed forces of the Philippines. The president serves a 6-year term and cannot be re-elected. The vice president supports the president if the president is unable to serve. The vice president becomes president. He or she also serves a 6-year term. Cabinet members serve an advisors to the president. They include the vice president and the head of executive department. Cabinet members are nominated by the president and must be confirmed by pass the commission of appointment. The third one is the judicial branch that interpret the meaning of laws, apply laws to individual cases, and decide if laws violate the Constitution. The judicial power shall be vested in one Supreme Court and in just lower court as may be established by law. Judicial power include the duty of the Court of Justice to settle actual controversies involving rights which are legally demandable and enforceable, and to determine whether or not there has been a grave abuse of discretion amounting to lack or excess of jurisdiction on the part of any branch of instrumentality of the government. The judicial branch interpret the meaning of laws, apply laws to individual cases, and decide if laws violate the Constitution. The comparison of 5 pillars of the criminal justice system in the Philippines and Japan. In the Philippines and Japan, there are 5 pillars consisting of law enforcement, prosecution, court correction, and community or rehabilitations in Japan. They are almost the same pillar but differences in meaning. The first pillar is law enforcement, which generally consists of all police agencies. The police is the prime movers without which the process will be at standstill. Conversely, any mistake committed this level will be total mistake in the entire process. Law enforcement agency is a criminal justice agency which the principle of function of the prevention, detention, investigation of crime, and apprehension of alleged offenders. While the law enforcement in Japan is provided mainly by the prefectural police department under the oversight of the national police agencies, but there are various other law enforcement officials in Japan. The National Police Agency is administered by the National Public Safety Commission, thus ensuring that Japanese police are an apolitical body and free of direct central government executive control. They are checked by an independent judiciary and monitored by a free and active press. There are 2 types of law enforcement officials in Japan, depending on the underlying provision. Police officers of prefectural police departments prescribed as judicial police officials under Article 198 of the Code of Criminal Procedure, and especially judicial police officials prescribed in Article 190 of the same laws. Dealing with specialized field with high expertise. Terminologies of the courts. Jurisdiction is the authority to hear and decide legal controversies. Venue is the site or location where the case is to be tried on the merits. Bail is the security given for the release of a person in custody of the law, furnished by him or
bondsman condition upon his appearance before any court as required under the conditions hereinafter specified. Judgment is the adjudication by the court that accused is guilty or not guilty of the offense charged, and the imposition of the proper penalty and civil liability provided for by law on the accused.
Court organization. First, Supreme Court, often referred to as the court of last resort. It renders final judgment on constitutional and other important issues and questions of law. Second, Court of Appeals. This court generally exercise appellate jurisdiction over decision of interior courts not otherwise falling within the appellate jurisdiction of the Supreme Courts. Third, Regional Trial Court. There are regional trial court in various types of the country. Regional trial court exercise in exclusive original jurisdiction in civil cases as described in Section 19, Chapter 2 of the Batas Pambansawan 29 Judiciary Reorganization Act of 1980, and in criminal cases not within the exclusive jurisdiction of any court, tribunal or body, except those falling under of a court render unnecessary any very frequent exercise of its power. The Japanese judicial system. There are 5 types of ordinary courts in the Japan: summary courts, family courts, district courts, high courts, and the Supreme Courts. Japan utilizes a 3-tiered judicial system, and in most cases, a summary, family, or district court will be the court of first instance depending on the nature of the matter. First, summary courts. The summary courts handle in principle civil lawsuit involving claims which do not exceed 1.4 million. The summary courts also handle civil conciliation cases and demand for payment. Furthermore, they handle criminal cases related to relatively minor offenses are lawful residing in Japan. 2. Family courts. The family courts handle lawsuits related to personal status, adjudication and conciliation for family affair cases, adjudication for juvenile cases, and other similar cases. 3. District courts. The district courts handle the first instance of most types of civil, criminal, and administrative cases, as well as cause of appeals against a final judgment of the first instance of civil cases rendered by summary courts. Most civil cases are normally deliberated by a single judge except for cases for which the court has decided that it shall be tried by 3 judges and certain other cases. High courts. The high courts mainly handle cause of appeals filed against a final judgment rendered by a lower court, such as the first instance at a district court, a final judgment rendered by a family court, and the first instance of a criminal case at a summary court. 5. The Supreme Courts. The Supreme Court is the highest and final court and handles appeal against judgment rendered by high courts, Jokoku appeals, and certain specially Kokuku appeals that are prescribed under the procedural law. It is composed of the Chief Justice and 14 justices with a grand bench comprised of all 15 justices and 3 petty benches, each comprised of 5 justices. The cases are first assigned to one of the 3 petty benches, and those cases that involve constitutional question are transferred to the grand bench for examination and adjudication homeless. The fourth pillar that serves vital role in the criminal justice system in the Philippines is corrections. It is the correctional institution where sentenced persons are trained and rehabilitated to start anew, while the correction in Japan is intended to socialize, reform, and rehabilitate offenders. In confinement, prisoners are first classified according to gender, nationality, type of penalty, length of sentence, degree of criminality, and state of physical and mental health. And the fifth pillar in PCJS in community, the community has an unparalleled role as the fifth pillar in the criminal justice system. In this connection, community is understood the mean as elements that are mobilized and energized to help the authorities in the effective addressing the law and order concern of the citizenry.